As a way of centering us for our time today, I want to share with you Psalm 52, and I'll be using the Common English Bible translation. Hey, powerful people, why do you brag about evil? God's faithful love lasts all day long. Your tongue devises destruction. It's like a sharpened razor causing deception. You love evil more than good. You love lying more than speaking what is right. You love all destructive words. You love the deceiving tongue. But God will take you down permanently. He will snatch you up, tear you out of your tent, and uproot you from the land of the living. The righteous will see and be in awe. They will laugh at those people. Look at them. They didn't make God their refuge. Instead, they trusted in their own great wealth. They sought refuge in it to their own destruction. But I am like a green olive tree in God's house. I trust in God's faithful love forever and always. I will give thanks to you, God, forever, because you have acted. In the presence of your faithful people, I will hope in your name, because it is so good. Amen. Hi, I want to welcome you to Hobson UMC on YouTube. I am VHD Sonny Dixon Jr. I'm the lead pastor here at Hobson, and I'm in for my weekly conversation with my son Trey as he helps me to move from my time of thinking about what it is that I'm going to preach for this coming Sunday, and he kind of helps me transition into looking at the message, and it's also a time just for us to be able to check in. And those of you who are familiar with this know that at the end of our time, we spend some time in conversation. We never know where that conversation might go. Sometimes it is more poignant as relates to the scripture, but all of the time it helps be able to put in the context what I might be sharing, because he lets me know what's going on, not only in our lives, but in the faith community that we are both a part of. This time is also serves as an opportunity for me to be able to connect with you. Many of you who listen are not a part of our community, but have become a part via this YouTube experience, and I am always, we are always delighted and thankful when you say that you listen and that we said something that was helpful for you. Maybe it was helpful in a time where you were going through something and it brought you some comfort, or maybe it was something that challenged you just to be able to look at the Word in a different way. But whatever the reason, we're always glad to hear from you, and always welcome your suggestions. Sometimes you suggest things that we can talk about, and even some of you even have suggested maybe a scripture or maybe approach. Normally, I am a lectionary preacher, and I follow that pattern. But sometimes, and those of you who are familiar with it say, well, why don't you take a look at this one, because you have looked ahead on the reading. So we're thankful for that. And it also gives me an opportunity just to be able to say thank you for your overall support, for those of you who support us financially here at Hobson, and those who support us with your prayers and for your presence and your words that uplift us and keep us going, particularly in this day and time where there is so much negativity. When you offer up a positive word for us, it really does mean a lot. So I want to thank you for spending some time with us and tuning in, and hope that today is another one of those days where we say something that was beneficial to you. an important time for us at Hobson is always our time that we call the sharing of our joys and concerns. It is our prayer time where we lift up and invite those who are there to share what's on their heart, those things of which we know that we give thanks to God because we know God has made it happen, or those things where we know that we need God to intervene on our behalf. And so we spend time in sharing with one another. And that's whether we're in worship or in small groups, whenever we're together, we take seriously prayer. Interesting enough, even last week when I was talking and offering up prayers for some people of whom had COVID, somebody said to me this week, make sure that you continue to lift that up. The numbers are increasing. And while the numbers are increasing because we are having, we're not having the number of people who are dying from it as it was in the early stages of it, we've still got some people who are very, very sick and who are going through a lot in dealing with it. And so they encouraged me to bring that up in prayer. And so I do want to ask that you continue to be in prayer. Those of you who are over 50, if you have not had your second booster, then I do encourage you to do that. I got a booster a few weeks ago, and probably think that it's going to, for me, it's going to probably, and for many of us, it's going to probably be like the flu shot. It's going to be something that we're going to have to look at. But I do want to encourage you to continue to be safe. And don't throw those masks away. They're still important. Today, Trey and I went somewhere together, and when he got out, he immediately turned around and got his mask to put it on. And so as our prayer time, I do want to encourage you to continue and to be praying for those of whom are currently dealing with it. Another part of when our celebrations and what we look forward to, particularly on Sunday, and many of you have become to look forward to on our recording, are when we're celebrating our birthdays. And to know that we have made it around the sun another 365 days means a great deal. And in this season where I've been spending a lot of time going to visitations and lifting up. It is a delight to be able to call out some names of some birthdays. And so for this week, I want to lift up and everybody that's on the list is special. You get on our list because you're special, but we have some special folk of whom we want to lift up, and we start out. Stacy Nelson's birthday is this week. Pamela Crosby, Danielle St. Clair, Felicia Teasley, Reverend Gary Henderson, Kathy Austin, dear friend Barbara Frazier, who's always checking us out. A cousin, Patrick Dixon, another cousin, Bianca King, Keisha Winton, Olivia Cloud, Annie Gregory Tetcher, Nicole Washington, Elliot Robinson, Cindy Witt, Sarah Davis, Ed Lanquist, Lynn Ingram, Janice Birdsong, Reverend Bob Coleman, fraternity brother and friend Dewan Buford, Rashid, Mary Mancini, Glenda White, another name from my past, an old classmate of mine, Kitty Jones, Danica King, Jacobia Dial, John Walker, William Wade, and Edna Davenport. If you know those folk, be sure to send them a shout out this week and to help them celebrate. We always like to tell them to take care and celebrate well, and if you know, help them to celebrate. Want to ask that you continue to be in prayer for some families that this week celebrated the life of their loved ones, and I say that those celebrations kind of really are the beginning of the grief, kind of the public grief period for them, and so we want to lift them up. In particular, want to lift up today the family of Claire Johnson, her son Ernest, and his wife Marquenta, and her daughter Dee. Dee's always has been a very special person to me. And then I ask you to continue to be in prayer for the family of Dr. Joe Shelton. This city has come together and mourning Vernon Winfrey. I ask that you continue to be in prayer for them, and continue to be in prayer for the family of Lynn Talley. Then we're still dealing with heat in our communities, and so I'm just asking you to be in prayer and to check on your neighbors as they are dealing with this heat. Trey and Brittany were having some issues, and we're talking to the repairman, and he was just saying, he has been extremely busy. While we're having to call, we also just want to ask for prayers for forgiveness for these companies that are just jacking up the prices for Freon and for parts because they know people are in need, and the whole system that, as we're talking about inflation and things going up, a lot of people want to blame it on the supply chain, but we're praying for those of whom the greed chain, as people are just putting up prices for that. So pray for traveling mercies. We've got a lot of people who are getting their summer vacations in before school is back in session. Pray for the Nelsons. Stacy's going to be out of town celebrating her birthday, and so we just ask for prayers for all of them. If you have special prayer requests that you want us to be in prayer for, please let me know. Send them to me via Facebook, text me, email me. However it is, let us know, because we want to be in prayer. And as I say that, ask that you continue to be in prayer for Jean Bryan, who celebrated her brother's life a couple of weeks ago, but it's been a difficult time for her in the grief pattern. And so just let us know, and we will continue to be in prayer for all of you. And then I close. I also want to ask for you to be in prayer for another friend, Lisa Borkins, who is having some issues and having some tests, and we ask that you be in prayer for her. Our reading for this week comes from Luke's Gospel, and we are again in the 10th chapter. We're at the end of it, and I'll be reading for you verses 38 through 42, and I'll be using the Common English Bible translation. While Jesus and his disciples were traveling, Jesus entered a village where a woman named Martha welcomed him as a guest. She had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his message. By contrast, Mary was preoccupied with getting everything ready for their meal. So Martha came to Jesus and said, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to prepare the table all by myself? Tell her to help me." The Lord answered, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. One thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the better part, it won't be taken away from her. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Trey, normally I kind of look a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks in advance. I'm kind of, because I'm following the lectionary and I'm kind of going through things. And so, but last week was a very busy week for me, and I was doing some stuff. So I had not even moved forward because I was doing some other things. And one of the things I was doing, had to do last week, was to prepare a eulogy for a former classmate of mine. And strangely enough, I based my eulogy on Martha, and the Martha and Mary that we have in this week's story. Now, much of what I shared with the people who were there, and as I looked at the life of my former classmate and friend, and comparing her and using her life to help me kind of understand Martha's life a little better, I did use much of what I read about Martha from John's Gospel, and really had forgotten about this story that is in Luke. So when I was sitting on Sunday, and now I've looked at what I preached on earlier in the day, and I'm trying to say, okay, what did I miss? What do I need to touch bases on? Where do I need to kind of go next week? And started looking at the passage. And I just kind of started laughing because I was like, oh, wow, here's Martha. And certainly some of the things that I said about Martha or read into Martha or how I see Martha comes off a little different than the Martha of how she is portrayed in this story. And so I doubt whether there are many people, in fact, I'm sure that probably a lot of people will skip over this particular passage and use maybe one or the other. A friend of mine is doing a series around the lectionary and is doing it on Amos. And I have been enjoying listening to his commentary about that, and probably would have, had it not been for the experience of last weekend, probably would have gone to Amos rather than looking at this different take that I normally have on Martha. But the more that I kind of looked at it and kind of got into it this week, I do think that there is a word that's in there for us. Mary, Martha and Mary in this passage. I'm one who firmly believes it doesn't tell us the village in Luke's reading of it, but it was Bethany. And I am one who believes that Jesus loved hanging out at their house. Whenever he was in Bethany, he stopped by to visit with them, and it was a great time. And I don't think all of the time that he stopped by, it was always a very heavy thing. They were getting into teaching, and he was doing all that kind of stuff. I just think that there were just times that he went and just enjoyed himself and sat around and probably played cards. I don't think that he was, I don't think he played spades, or I don't think he played bid whist, anything. I just kind of see Jesus as probably being one who probably played hearts. But, whatever it was, I mean, whenever he went to Bethany, he looked up, and their homes were always open and always welcoming to him. And so in this particular time, when he's there, and I just, in my own, using my own sanctified imagination with this story, I just think, Jesus kind of popped in. And as normally was the case, I mean, when he showed up, he just wasn't by himself. He had a crowd of people with him, and he stopped in and he said, "Hey, here's where we are." And I just see Martha as opening up the doors and says, "Come on in. Let me get some things together. Come on, sit down, make yourself comfortable, and I will get some things done." I can see Martha just kind of going around and just putting things together and trying to put so that there would be a decent meal for her good friend Jesus, who was in there. I believe that Martha was a great cook, and that people just love Martha's cooking, and I just see her in the kitchen. Probably had some stuff together, probably put together a tamale pie, and was getting it all together and trying to get this and getting that together. And while Jesus was sitting in, and people were gathered around him. And as the story implies, in this case, they were sitting around, and this was probably not a time of playing cards, but it was a time of just sharing with them, and that we're telling of the story. And we hear in the story that Mary is sitting at Jesus' feet and is listening intently to what Jesus is saying. Martha sees that. And then Martha just goes in and tells Jesus, "Look, Jesus, I need some help in here. Why don't you just tell Mary to come in here and to be able to help me? I mean, if she doesn't help me, it's going to be late in you getting some food." Now, as we hear that story and as we hear it today, I mean, we probably read some stuff into it, but the reality of it is, when they heard the story, it probably was a little bit of scandalous, in particular when Jesus kind of tells Martha, "No, look, Martha, you got things wrong. I mean, kind of leave her alone." I'm sure her presence, while it disturbed Martha, it probably also were disturbing the men who were sitting there, because we get this picture of Jesus is doing some teaching and sharing in this moment, and that normally was not a place of where women would have even been welcome. In the inner city, the audacity of Mary just to sit down at his feet. I mean, at this point, he is viewed as a teacher, and the seat at the feet of the teacher were reserved for the students, for the outstanding students, for those of whom we would expect to be able to carry the teachings forward. And that just was not a place for women. And so there are those of whom hear this, and when hear the comment that even though Jesus kind of says, "Leave her alone and let her sit there," there are a lot of people who look at this story and then kind of saying, "Boy, Jesus really did miss an opportunity," because he tells Martha to leave her alone. But at the same time, he does not, even though he has her, he invites Mary to stay there, he doesn't make a very political statement, or he doesn't stand up for this kind of thing. Women need to be there. And maybe if Jesus had have been bold in that moment and been able to say that this is not a place that is restricted just for men, that it is a place where women, that maybe we would not have had the thousands of years of the struggle of where we have said that women should not be in certain parts of ministry and we would exclude ministry, that if he had just made a more bold statement of affirming Mary's presence and saying to, and in fact, it would have even been great, I think, if maybe Jesus would have said, well, you know what, Martha, you're distracted. Don't worry about it. Why don't you come and why don't you sit down? Look, I tell you what, I know we got to have something to eat. I'll send John and James. I'll send them, and they'll go by Popeyes and pick up, some chicken, and I'll send Andrew and send him out to get some water. And some jars of water, and of course, we got jars of water. I can change that to wine. I mean, we can have it, but don't worry about it. Just come and sit down at this moment. And so there are those of whom, just this passage, just upsets them in all kinds of ways, that it reinforces that, a woman's place is in the kitchen, is not a place with Jesus. And even though he makes the kind of exception with Mary, he really does not uplift Mary in that moment. He really doesn't stand against all of the stereotypes that would have been a part of that patriarchal system of where he was presenting at that time. And so from a political standpoint, and even I know that in the past, even I have taken that approach of saying, I think that Jesus missed an opportunity with that. But this year, I kept going back to something, and that as I have moved through this season of Pentecost and looking at the lessons that we have, I go back to the one that we had a few weeks ago, where it says in the 9th chapter, it says that Jesus had made his decision and had set his face toward Jerusalem. On this stop, this place of where I am sure he had been many times before, this place of where he had great fun and great opportunity, Jesus knew that this was his last visit to their home. Now, we'll kind of view from the other writings that he will make some other stops there, but I don't want to move and go to John. I want to stay strictly in Luke in that regards. And so this is his last visit. This is the last opportunity they will have to be with him. And he is saying in that moment that what Mary is seeking and what others who are there and who are in the presence, that the most important thing for them is for them to spend this time. The food, the meal, the party, all of the things that Mary is focusing in on, Jesus is saying in this moment, and I think is saying to us, is that there are times that we have to evaluate and look at the circumstances and look at the situations, and we have to make the best choice. Now, I am sure that had Jesus been said to them, look, I'm never coming this way again, and this is my last visit, and that everybody needs to do this and to do this, surely things would have been different. Because that's the way we are. That, as I said, the last few weeks I have visited with some families and been a part of visitation, and almost a common phrase that I have heard in all of those situations. Well, I just didn't know. That if I had known that it was this close, if I had known that they would, that my loved one was dying, I would have done this and I would have done that. I would have made some other choices. In one case, it says, well, I didn't go be with them because I thought it was going to be some time. And if I had only known that the time was shorter than I would have dropped everything I would have done and would have gone to them. And so I think this passage does cause us to say, and for us to realize that that when we have these opportunities, in particular when we have an opportunity to be in Jesus' presence and to be able to know that Jesus is at the center of the community and the center of those moments, that the most important thing for us to do is to spend our time and listening and being involved and being and allowing that moment to guide us, that some of those things that we think that are more important and those things that we want to rush around and do are not as important because we never know. It's strange. I think it was a couple of weeks ago, I had stopped by to see someone, and they had kind of said, the same thing, oh, we never know. And I just had to have people come together, and because we never know. We never know. And I said, boy, that's really a wonderful thing. And then no sooner than they had made that statement, and then everybody started to enjoying the refreshments and doing the other thing, they began to talk about all of their plans for the summer and what they were going to do this next fall in school and began to make all of the plans, as if somehow all of the things that they had said before of taking advantage of the moment, it had set for that moment, but it did not change or transform in that moment. I believe that in this moment, that Mary sat there, and those who sat and listened to him probably recall those conversations much more than any other the conversation or any other the things that he has said on the many times that it was there. It is something that resonates with us when we review and we know that it was the last time. All of us, I think, who are listening to this have had that experience of where we spent a last moment. And when we go back and we review those last moments and we read some things into it, and there's some things that we wish that we have said, but we always give thanks that we did have that moment. And I think that this is an invitation in this passage to take into consideration that Jesus was not coming this way again. And that they would never, that years later, they would not remember what Martha said. They would not remember, whether or not the tamale pie was the best tamale pie that she had ever had. They will not remember or whether or not there was enough wine to go around. They will not remember whether or not the activities of what people wore, what they did, but they will remember what was said. They will remember how they felt. They will remember the love that was present in that. And so I'm sure that this Sunday and the message that comes with this Sunday will be that message for us to take and look, not from a critical eye that Jesus had an opportunity to make a political statement in that moment, but what that Jesus says to us is that we have to evaluate those circumstances that we find ourselves in, and to view those circumstances from a standpoint, what if this were the last time that we were there, and what then becomes important in those last times. I think that our lives, I think that some things that we do certainly would be better. And I have to admit that part of what is kind of guiding and what has influenced a lot of my thinking is that earlier today I listened to some of the parents who sent their kids to Robb Elementary in Texas on that day, and I listened to them talk about if they had only known, if they had, and some of the things, and some were regretting it. I didn't give up. We were rushing, and I did not give a hug, and I did not do some things. I just want to encourage us to be people who look at our circumstances and look at the situations that we're in, and to look at the choices that we made. Jesus said to Mary, said to Martha, Mary made the right choice. And I'm just going to be bold enough to say that Martha dropped what she was doing, left out the kitchen, took off her apron, and let Jesus and send John and James down to Popeyes. And I just hope that they remembered to get some, what's that, Cajun sprinkle, and to bring it back, and that they enjoyed that time that they spent together. Amen. Well, Trey, how things going with you?
Things are going pretty good. In a good place here.
How was your day?
My day was pretty good. Had some meetings this afternoon, but it turned out pretty well. What about yours?
Pretty good day. As I said, I went by, we went together, so we went to the visitation, but I got to see Dee, and so while the situation was not good, it was good to see her, good to get a hug from her, and just to share a moment with her, and so that was a good thing. And then also, as I told but our listeners don't know, I was kind of rushing and trying to get Mason together as we were trying to get out, and Mason had moved a toy that I did not see, and I hit that toy and fell out and was laid out on the floor. Kind of hurt my hip, but the thing that made it all better instantly, I laid out on the floor, and Mason was ready to leave, and I guess he heard me fall, and he came back in, and I was laying on the floor. He said, "Grandpa," he said, "You all right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm all right. I'm all right." And so he kind of looked at me, kind of strange, like, and he asked me again, "All right?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm all right." And then he was like, "Well, let's go." If you're all right, then it's time for us to go. And so his concern made me feel better, and I kind of got from his tone. I remember all of those times when I was coaching and doing something, and had a player, that was out and hurt, you all right, well, get up, shake it off, let's go, we gotta move on. So that was kind of interest, kind of the low point and the high point of my day thus far. So
yeah. I mean, he is developing here in the past, I guess, couple of weeks, couple of months. He's developing at a fast pace, where some of his personality traits and all of that stuff is kind of coming out. And, it's definitely seeing him grow and seeing him be, who he's programmed or who he's being raised to be is definitely one of the highlights of being a parent. That's my boy right there.
Yeah. The other thing that I guess after we were, after we got back and were, and those a moment that he allowed me to look at something other than Coco Melon or the Grinch, but I was looking at the news, and they were talking about the election that is coming up, and I think early voting starts on Friday and going through. and they were talking about this long ballot that we have, and and all of the expense and all of the things that we're going to. And I am one of those who, I just think that the turnout's going to probably be light. People are so disinterested, particularly in this area, where we got so many people who have moved to Nashville that don't care. I mean, things for them are fine. They don't see any correlation between, people that are elected for office and people that are elected for office are going to do certain things. But it really is, disappoints me, the number or the lack of interest that people have. And I'm sure that as they talked about a long ballot, that just probably turned some people off. But yeah, I'm one that I have, since I turned 18 years old, I do not miss an election. I mean, I go and vote. If I don't see anybody on there that I want to vote for, then I'll write somebody's name in. But I want it to be known that I voted.
Yeah.
And I have listened to some of these reports and people who have been talking about elections being, stolen and all of the stuff that we're going on. And I found it interesting on one of the stations I was listening to, the person was talking about how they had gone to Washington because the vote had been stolen, and they wanted to respond to that. But then they admitted they hadn't voted, And so, I just, I don't know. I mean, you're kind of in that generation, and particularly in this community,
Sure.
where a lot of people will say, well, we don't have a lot of options to be able to vote for. Things are kind of already set. I know you were interested as a young person because your dad ran for some office, and so
Sure, yeah.
you had to go out and do some campaigning in that regard.
Right.
But how do you think your peers, your friends? I mean, are those things? I was proud of the fact that you went out and did low voting on election day, and not voting, but went out and did a little campaigning and for a cousin. And I think that that's where a lot of people are now. I mean, if they've got a friend that's running, then they kind of go out and do some things. But as far as just kind of getting into the issues, where do you see your friends, and do you and your friends talk about it?
No, I mean, I think some of my friends that are focused on things outside of their family. I mean, for instance, Steve, he talks about the importance of voting and being, responsible in that way. But generally speaking, those are not topics that I have discussions with any of my friends. Who to vote for, and staying abreast of what the issues are, and who said what and who did what, and I'll, can only speak for myself because I don't want to, represent any of my friends in that way. But, I think no matter who you vote for and what you think they stand for, that all of that is subject to change.
Yeah.
Because, they may have good ideas and their agenda may align with my lifestyle and what I think is appropriate, but they get into office and they have to contend and go against the grain with people who may not be aligned like me. So, regardless of what their stance is, they're limited, and the way that, the politics work. You know, they may get into office. I mean, you think about all of those things that, you know, they might not represent me in the way that I want to be represented. So, you know, I just take a lot of that stuff, you know, as it is.
Yeah.
And, you know, I will tell you this, that after I vote and after I cast my ballot, whether the person that I voted for wins or not, it's like I don't keep up with what their track record is or what they voted yay or nay on or anything like that. So I don't,
Yeah.
you know, I just don't have any skin in the game in that way.
Well, you know, and I think that's a lot of, you know, that's a lot of folk, and feel that same way. And I think that that's one of the reasons, you know, we're probably in the shape, you know, that we're in.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You know, one of the things that's on the ballot is changing. We'll be voting on changing the requirements to be a police officer.
Okay.
You know, and now, you know, they use the same standards, I think, to get into being to the Army, the Air Force. And now that people say, well, we're having trouble getting, so we need to be able to lower the standards.
Lower the standards.
And, you know, there are people that are, you know, hey, what difference does it make? You know, I'm not going to be. But yet, then when something happens, then, you know, we'll all be upset, you know, saying, well, we ought to do this and we ought to do that. But I just think it is one of the things I remember, you know, years ago, you know, I was an advocate of saying, you know, well, to get a certain licenses, like for instance, to be able to have a license to carry a gun, if you want to say, you know, that's my constitutional right, then you also ought to vote. If you don't vote, you ought not to get a license. You know, that, and it just really does. I was, you know, offended. You know that some years ago we had, you know, a person who ran for senator, you know, in our state, and the first time they ever voted was the time they ran. Until then, they weren't even registered to vote. They didn't care anything about the process because it was kind of like, you know, I'm going to get whatever I want, but we have to participate. And when I think of the number of people who lost their lives trying to get me the right and to have so that I could have the access to vote, you know, for me, voting is a way of honoring those efforts. It's a way of me just saying, you know, I want to participate and I want to have a voice on certain issues. And so, you know, I've been cautious. I mean, you know, when I served as, you know, in certain offices and certain positions, as president of the NAACP and IMF, and play. You know, I didn't endorse people when I had those positions, but what I always did is I always encouraged people to vote and encourage people to kind of, and that's what I'm kind of doing in this moment. You know, we're getting ready to do that, and I hope that people will be motivated and to check out the ballots and to see and to find something. I know that there's some country, you know, that they have on a ballot you can say, you know, none of the above. I mean, you know, just to go in and say I'm here to go and to vote and get that little sticker that said I vote, because when I go and vote, I do feel good. Now I might not feel good about the outcome of the election, but I certainly feel good that I have participated in a part of the process that says, you know. So anyway, so that you know, that's what's kind of on, and I wanted to. People will hopefully be listening to this, and maybe there'll be somebody who was thinking, I don't know whether I want to, but at least we'll hear this and say, well, I've got a choice. As Jesus said in the story, to Martha, we got choices, and Mary made the right choice. And I
Yeah.
hope that we have a choice whether we go vote and who we vote for. And I'm not saying who I'm for and all of that, but I do hope that people will make the decision and go vote.
So let me ask you this:
Yeah.
why is it a large ballot? What makes it larger than any other ballot that
Well, we got county election. See, we had county primaries. That's what we went and voted for, and we changed some things around. And we used to not have Democrat and Republican candidates for certain positions, but then they changed, and then we had Democrat and Republican. I mean, like for school board, now you can run as a Democrat or Republican or independent. Now, I don't know what any of that party politics has to do with being on the school board, but a few months ago, we voted for the primary. So we voted for a Democrat and a Republican person for the school board. Now, we will go back on this election and vote for them. And we are having a primary for people who are running for state offices or statewide offices and national office. So we'll be voting for the primary for people who will run for state representatives. So we'll have a Democrat and Republican. In our district, we have a full slate of Democrats, and we don't have but one person for a Republican. And then the people who win those will come and will run in November. Well, we also have some, as I say, some amendments to our local city codes, and then we have some that are for the state. So it's a whole lot of stuff, and we got, I guess it's 20 judges. I mean, and most of them are unopposed, but we got to go through the process and then go in and vote. So it's just the number of offices, and I have not looked at it. That will probably, I won't vote early. I won't be voting on Friday, but I will probably spend some time on Sunday and looking at the ballot. But that's why we've got, because we'll be voting for local, state, and national positions.
Okay. All right.
Okay. I want to thank you for tuning in today and for our conversation. And I guess we'll wrap it up by saying two things that we lifted up today. One, I do encourage you to continue to be safe. And with regards to COVID, I was in the store today and saw some people walking around with masks on, and I truly appreciated that, and it did. As I say, we still have to be careful with some of the places that we gather, and then I do while it for some of you, you may not feel like you have a choice in this upcoming elections that are taking place, but go and just register, and if you don't feel like voting for anybody, at least go and show up. Because as I was talking to someone not too long ago, they line up to vote for America Got Talent and American Idol, and they don't miss a vote for that. And I said, you tune in and you vote for that, but you won't go out to the poll. And we've got a couple of weeks of early voting that we have, and then of course on election day. And I just want to encourage you to take some time and to go out and vote. And thank you for spending some time with us.